Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Hopefully the sound of the air conditioner in the background is not too annoying. I hate extraneous noise in videos. Um, but anyhow, my girlfriend gave me this great LL Bean heavyweight flannel shirt for a special day for me yesterday, and so it's funny because it's like the hottest day. She's had me try it on. It's like the hottest day of the year so far. I hate the heat, hate the humidity, and she's like, "Well, how do you like it?" I'm like, "Well, it's hard to say. It's nice and heavyweight, but maybe I'll have to jack the air conditioning all the way up and see, like, oh, now it feels good." But anyhow, this video is not about that, nor is it about my misadventures with my microphone levels, because I've noticed the volume in my videos is going up and down, and I just realized this laptop, for whatever reason, just readjusts the microphone levels every once in a while. I'm not sure why it does that, so I kind of have to always check to see where it is. So, not about technological misadventures or flannel shirts or anything. I wanted to do a recap video, and more of like an impressions video, from the solo session I just played in a couple of days ago with Anthony. Runesinger has been cool enough to run a solo session for each of the three other game masters. So he's done a full-on session with the three of us. Then Nolan Inquisitor did one with with the three of us, and Dan Anthony would run a solo session for his character. And so we've kind of gone on the line. So now my character had a chance to have that happen. Maybe in the future, another one of us will take on that mantle and do it. I'm not sure what we're going to do with that, but that's been kind of fun to do some more character explorations. Now, the first thing is, like, I can't remember the last time I've played in a solo adventure or session. It's been decades, and I remember I used to hate that sort of stuff. I used to hate game mastering it. I used to hate playing in it, because we weren't doing character exploration. It was kind of like, well, nobody else is available to play, and sometimes you'd play two characters or a character and his henchman, and sometimes you just play a more powerful character. And the session, to my recollection, because like I said, it's been decades, would be more about the typical kind of going up against obstacles, that sort of thing. So this has been a very different kind of session. It was funny because Philippe, my character in that game, he's pretty much a one-trick pony. He doesn't have a lot of personality depth. He doesn't have a lot of social skills. I don't want to say he doesn't have personality depth, but just, he's not the guy that can talk himself out of situations. He's not the guy that's really grim and brooding. He's a young man with something to prove, and he's a hell of a swordsman. And so I'm starting the session, and before Anthony presses live, we're talking. I said, "Man, I'm really a little nervous, and not just because it's so solo, but it's not like I'm nervous because I don't have the other players, but because my character doesn't have the other characters to kind of lean on." And so, true to form, instantly the game becomes, it had some swordplay, which is another story. But it becomes about things, where constantly Philippe is reeling and completely out of his element. It's a lot of social things going on. He's involved in this Renard school. He started to teach fencing there, which is something I kind of like. He said he was going to start doing anyway because he's been hurt a few times. So he's it feels like his mojo is off, and the Renoir School of Fencing is all about fighting multiple opponents. So he's going back there drilling all the time. So he starts to teach beginning students. So the master, Claude Renard, actually brings me in the office, says, "Here's this new student, Pierre. He's really young. He's definitely younger than he says he is, but he's paid for 6 months up front. I'm entrusting you, Philippe, to go and handle this guy, this kid's lessons, and to start him out, and just, don't screw this up." And so all throughout the session, I found myself hesitating. And I think if you watch the session, you'll see me constantly, hesitating and not sure what to do. And I think from an outsider's perspective, somebody watching that session might think that, like, I personally didn't know what to do. And that might have been the case like once or twice, I think, if that, in the game. Every time I would sit there and take this deep breath and hesitate, it's because Philippe was wondering what the heck to do. And so I try to get that much into character. So, every time he hesitates, even in combat situation, he's not really sure what the heck to do. And in the combat situations, what ended up happening was he's kind of tethered to this young kid. He's got two big dilemmas, because he had really, I think there were two combats. He fought a bunch of, peasant, like, they're kind of beggars, is what they turned out to be. That just all they wanted was Pierre's clothes and his money, because they were starving and desperate, and he was a noble. And there was another session with a few Cardinals guards. In both of those fights, I have two things, not three, two things I'm worried about. First thing is, I want to save face in front of this kid. I don't want to. We've started to develop a relationship, and also I'm supposed to be impressing him. I've told him all this great stuff about the Renard School and about myself, and the last thing I want to do is get beat up in a fight with multiple people. The second thing is that I feel like I need to protect him. So he's kind of like an anchor, and so I can't do a lot of the stuff that Philippe would be able to do, because that would involve a lot of moving around, and I wouldn't be able to protect this kid. And he kind of froze one time, and the other time he was actually fighting somebody that could probably trounce him. So I'm a little worried about him. So that was, I had to, my character ended up approaching these combats, which would be much more comfortable for him, with a much more hesitant vibe. And also the rest of the game, he was constantly presented with, what do you do here? And Philippe was just completely at a loss, which I thought was great. I'm over and over again, I'm reeling from, just reeling from just being completely out of my element. Like, I wish Briscoe was here to tell me what to do. I wish Martin was here. I wish Jean-Marie was here, or Jean-Marie was here to tell me what to do. I don't know why. I took French. I should know that. Jean-Marie. It's not Jean-Marie. But anyhow, that's the way it's written. I'm an American. So, what are my other takeaways from this game? I really, really enjoyed the session. There was a lot of role play. Very little action or anything else. This young boy Pierre is really, we found as Armand de Bourbon. Real, actual character from history. And I love it when one of the guys pulls out a character from history, and we get to kind of play them as that character, but with a twist, because the game is, 17th century France during the 30 Years' War with a twist. And it's fun to be able to play these other historical characters with a bit of a twist. And we are, I believe that we're in this odd or fun situation as these four musketeers to be able to actually change the course of events a little bit in the lives of some of these people. So they don't necessarily go off in the historical direction they were going to go off in. Certainly there's other stuff in the world that's going to have that happen as well. But anyhow, I digress. I got to develop or explore some relationships with at least three non-player characters, which were really a lot of fun. There is Claude Renard, the maestro of the school of the Renard Academy, and so I got to have some role play with him and just kind of establish what our relationship was like, and that was fun. I didn't do that. I don't want to say I didn't do it enough, but I didn't do a lot. But at least we kind of established where Philippe is a bit in that hierarchy, which was cool. The second was with this kid Pierre, who was this is the first time that Philippe's had any kind of interaction in game, and probably for a long time, with somebody that's younger than he is, that's actually looking up to him, somebody that he can impress. And the kid was, over and over impressed by Philippe, which Philippe thought was great. But also, in those interchanges with him, I got to do a lot of sort of character exploration of Philippe. I can't believe I'm talking about character exploration, but here I am. But it's fun because, I'm finding myself relating to young Pierre as young Pierre is facing dilemmas of courage and of duty. Philippe is able to kind of share with him his experiences and the fact that he is often afraid, that that he has made mistakes, that it is okay to make mistakes, okay to feel fear, these sort of things. So indirectly, it became this character exploration as Philippe is identifying with this young Pierre, or Armand, but we'll call him Pierre because that's the name he's using because he had to sneak out. That was really kind of neat to kind of explore that relationship. So it's a relationship I'd love to see. Where can we go with that? Because ultimately, without spoiling too much, we get to the end of this session, and Pierre or Armand is saying that it's really probably irresponsible of him to go take these fencing lessons and put other people at risk. And he just had to sneak out. He has a lot of complex family situation, to say the least, which is interwoven not only with real history, but with the other NPCs we've already established. So that's going to be a lot of fun because it's interwoven a lot with Martin's family and the Cardinal Richelieu and just a bunch of stuff. So a lot of fun, a lot of potential in that kid, and the relationships that we're kind of weaving together in this collaborative story. So that's really neat. But just exploring that relationship, I'm kind of wanting to see where I can go. Philippe promises him, we'll find a way to keep training you. So I like to try to explore that. And had this brief interchange with Anthony today. We have to have a powwow of the four game masters and see, set some other ground rules. But part of what I'm wondering, I'm hoping this campaign goes on. Whether it does or not, we'll see. But finding out how we play out some of these background things. When we're using four game masters, how much stuff happens in the background versus how much stuff do we role play out in terms of something like Philippe's relationship with this young man, and is he going to surreptitiously figure out how to continue to train this kid in the Renard style, especially since he's paid 6 months up front. Hey, that's a good thing, and that's benefiting Philippe because Philippe gets a month free tuition at this school, which is also at stake. So we'll see what happens there. The other non-player character that it was really fun. It was very brief, but I could see so much potential in that guy. Was this guy Denis, who was just, you know, I said I need the most mature of the students that's here to help me drill this kid initially, because we have to fight him together. We're using blunt rapiers. We're just kind of, you know, seeing like what he's made of, kind of give him the treatment, let him know like how difficult it really is to fight multiple people. And this guy is incredibly mature, and even kind of clued in Philippe to the fact that this, you know, young Pierre was wearing makeup and he was actually wearing a disguise. And yeah, I could just, the interchanges were brief, but I thought to myself, this would be a cool guy to kind of develop as an ally if I wanted to. You know, I've been thinking about talents I could buy, but I'm wondering, maybe, do I really want to buy? Do I want to buy another resource? Do I want to buy an ally? Do I want to buy a relationship with a higher relationship with Pierre? So, just some real cool non-player character interactions. The other cool ones, this is the real fun part, is it wasn't intentional at first, but then it became very evident, you know, that that's what we were doing, as we didn't really say anything to each other, but we were kind of both going in the same direction, I believe, is because this session was happening at the exact same time as a session that I ran. There was 2 days, it was Thursday and Friday. Philippe is acting in the world just when we're just making sure that he doesn't run into the other characters. But he goes to the same places. He goes to the same Croissant Cafe, and has an interaction with the manager, the owner there, and it's right after the other Musketeers have left, which is really, really funny. And after that, he ends up going to see Luciano to get his wounds tended, so he's right there in the Musketeer compound, and then he goes right over to see Eugene, which is right after Briscourt leaves, you know, because Briscourt needed an outfit for the ball. So Eugene is in the middle of making this outfit for the ball, and here I am. You know, Philippe shows up later saying, "Hey, could you know, after why don't you stop for a second, just sew up my pants, because this guy just, you know, cut a big gash in my pants." And I get to have this interaction with Eugene. The really cool thing is I have quite the interaction with Eugene, where he or she, you know, gives me, I don't have no clue, you know, he's a woman, but gives me some insight into into Pierre, because I start spinning the story of everything that's happening with him, you know, with the exception of his name, which I do not now know yet his real identity. And she is, you know, giving me insight that, man, he must really feel, you know, be feeling poorly because he froze during this first encounter. And I get to these encounters because that's an important part I want to talk about as well. And I was like, man, that's a good insight. And so I'm wondering now, after this, the way the session ended, and I'm wondering how to continue this relationship with him, how to teach him surreptitiously. I'm thinking I'd love to get Denis involved in that, have this whole kind of, you know, that's just kind of an idea I had. We'll see where it really goes. But so one of the things I'm wondering if, you know, Philippe is going to end up using Eugene as a confidant every once in a while. That'd be kind of entertaining. So it's really neat to kind of just, you know, without real intentions, kind of, you know, having those NPC interactions, and then kind of thinking about them afterwards, thinking, this is really kind of cool. Kind of gets the session a lot more, or the setting a lot more rich. And so, you know, there goes, you know, anyhow, I did have some, got a chance for character exploration with Philippe, just see how earnest he is. And see him completely out of his element, where he's not really sure what to do, it was fun to be reeling all the time. As far as the combats, I had 2 different combats. There were combats with a group of peasants or beggars, ruffians, vagabonds, if you will, because young Pierre is convinced, you know, he's got one real enemy, one real family enemy, that it's just kind of an enemy of all the family. And he's convinced, though, coming to Paris, that this guy has set all these other people upon him. And really, you get the vibe that really what's going on is he's a young noble. He's dressed rich. He's obviously probably is carrying some money on him. And he doesn't realize that, like, if you walk around Paris like that, the beggars and the less fortunate are going to look at you as a target, especially as this young kid. And so he thinks these people are out to get him. And it's just people that probably just say, hey, let's take that guy's stuff. You know, so he hasn't figured that stuff out. The other combat I had was with a trio of Cardinal's Guards, and I knew some kind of combat's going to show up in this because that's kind of Philippe's shtick. I avoided any kind of combat with, you know, I ran into Etienne, I believe, or no, I ran into Thibodeau, Jean-Luc Thibodeau, I believe. He's Boots. I ran into him. He ended up also being at the party later on, so I couldn't really have a combat with him, but I saw him, and we kind of locked eyes for a second. That's the one I wounded in the first session. So that was kind of neat. You know, once again, I'm having these interactions with people. We're I'm just missing what's going on in that other session I ran, which was a lot of fun. So anyhow, so I have these two different combats, and there are a couple things about them. The first thing was that, like, they were really kind of a little clunky, and they were clunky for a couple reasons. They're clunky because that, like for the reason I talked about before, that Philippe is he's tethered to this kid. He can't do anything really dynamic and flashy. The other thing, I talked to Anthony a little bit afterwards about. I think I've identified like 4 things that I still need to work on. They're really subtle, but in terms of like narrating combat in a system like Ubiquity, or in a system which offers players a lot more freedom. And these are old habits or old things. So Anthony boiled them down to knowledge, habit, access to data, and view of narrative control. And he did it in one sentence. I'm like, man, he's a wordsmith. So, but the first hurdle would be that I really just don't know that much about fencing. So as Anthony's describing things that the players are doing, I'm just complete dunce when it comes to fencing. I've watched it, but that's about it. The second discrete area would be that for years I was used to narrating the last second or so of a combat. In other words, we'd play Dungeons & Dragons or something like that, and you narrate a little bit, but as a game master or a player, really would come down to is you finally would narrate the hit, how you connect with somebody, what kind of damage you did. How cool that might look, or you'd narrate the miss, and either you'd say something like you missed, which is boring, or you'd come down with with some way where they get out of your way at the last second, or they bat away your mace with their shield and all this stuff like that, and narrate a failure. But we narrate the last second. We wouldn't narrate a lot of the stuff in between. So not all discrete actions. The third thing was that sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable in narrating a system like this, because when we have a little interchange and I roll my successes and the defender rolls his defense, and we figure, okay, well, you've done some damage or 1 or 2 points of damage to their health, I'm not really quite sure like how much damage that really represents. So do I narrate a scratch or a little flesh wound, or do I narrate something where it's a really telling blow and this guy is just about to topple over? Not quite sure. Now I feel comfortable doing that in the old systems I played in. But this is something where I'm still kind of hesitating, like, well, how do I narrate that particular one? So that's another hurdle. And then fourth would be there is still that bit of uncomfortability for me that when I narrate a success in something like Ubiquity. So say I narrate my damage in combat, or how does it look when you hurt this fellow? I'm not just narrating that. I'm kind of, at this point, the whole narrative control of the scene shifts over to me for that second, and I get to narrate not just myself, but kind of what the other people are doing, what the guy that I've just hurt is doing. And so that's a little bit odd. And I don't think I was thinking of those things consciously during the moment of the combat, of the scene. But I think kind of in the back of my mind, those are some of those hurdles or obstacles that I need to overcome as I narrate stuff like that. So I which is great. There's room for growth. So that's probably the other reason that some of the combat scenes seemed a little bit clunky. And anyhow, this video is going longer than I wanted to, but whatever. If you love my channel, you just watch this video because you think I'm great. Anyhow, the last that's hubris right there. I'm trying to be humble. The last thing would be Anthony and I had a chance to talk after we terminated the Hangouts. We talked a little bit about how we handled the Mook battles, because in the session, I think it was the last session that I did, Anthony did a session for Sebastian where he used a particular rule, and then I think he used another rule during I forget which session he used an alternate rule. Anyhow, let me get to what these rules are in Ubiquity. You can use standard combat rules, so pretty much the stats are the stats. And so it's pretty much like it's not like a hit point countdown, it's a health countdown, but you're going to do health levels. The characters don't have that many health levels before they become incapacitated. But you could, average character is about 5 when it really boils down to it. So in any event, you can have that, so you can wound people several times. That's what happened in that second fight with the Cardinals guards. We were using standard combat rules, so I injured them. I wasn't knocking them out of the fight, and they were injuring me, because you always use standard combat rules for your character, for player characters. The second way you can handle it is something called blade fodder, which I believe is what Sebastian used in his session when we fought some of the Bavarian spies. And that is pretty much You use the standard rules. The attack defense pools are the same. However, once you hit one of these guys, they're blade fodder. They go down. You dispatch them. That's about it. That essentially is the same rules that Anthony used in this session with me. Is when I fought the ruffians, I used the blade fodder rules. So once I hit each one of these guys, they went down. That was it. The third way is you end up using a rule called from this supplement called Serious Situations, and there's more to it than this, and it covers a whole gamut of situations. But as far as like the combat with a bunch of mooks, for lack of a better term, it is pretty much you end up using 2 dice for each person. So say you're fighting 4 guys, they're going to use this 8-die pool, and it's really just an opposed roll for the most part. So you roll your attack roll, they roll this pool, however many guys are in the pool. If they have more successes than you do, then those are narrated as actual damage to you. So it can be very serious. You can get hurt pretty fast with this. However, if you roll more successes than they do, each success that you roll in excess of them, well, you just dispatched one of these guys. So in that, that's part of my session in the catacombs, where they're fighting these ruffians in the catacombs. Every time they scored a success on this group of guys, I think I had each person fighting 3 of them, they were able to dispatch them. So we had a discussion about, like, using those different rules, how those rules felt, whether it was, like, a fair way to do it. Because I don't believe there's a fairness. I think pretty much as a game master, you're free to figure out like which set of rules you want to use, because they're all optional when it comes right down to it. It comes down to, I think, more to like the flavor, like why are those people there? What kind of flavor do you want that particular part of the session to have? And so there were those moments where it would have been very appropriate, like to use, say, the serious situation rules. If I was able to really get in the middle of all these guys in this alleyway, or this opening in this alleyway, and fight all of them, not tethered to Pierre, then it might have been more appropriate to use those rules where I could do that, where I could dispatch a whole bunch of them. And that, is, in fact, is exactly what happened in the session that Anthony ran for Null Inquisitor. He's fighting these people in the dark, and he's dispatching them left and right, and that was very cool. But he was by himself. He's able to move around and able to narrate quite a bit of what he's doing, and it makes sense for him to be able to dispatch a bunch at once. And other times it makes more sense to be able to use those that blade fodder rule, where it's still more tense, and they still have the potential to do some more damage. Because definitely in Ubiquity, one of those things is multiple attackers, you're in trouble. It doesn't matter how great you are. I mean, it matters. Philippe can hold his own better than a lot of people, but every other attacker that's coming in at you, well, you take a -2 to your defense. So 2 guys is a serious situation. 3 guys fighting you is very, very serious. So I think we had this discussion, and it really depends on what the intent of that situation is. What why are these people here? What's the mood you're going for at that particular moment? The guys I had down in the catacombs, they were there just be there for a second and get knocked out of the way. It wasn't supposed to be as serious, so to speak, or as much of a pitched battle as pretty much the musketeers dispatching what was probably going to be an annoyance or a diversion. Anyhow, that's a lot of talking for for this session, or about this session. But those are kind of some of the takeaways. I really had a lot of fun. It gave me a lot to think about. It let me experience a lot of facets of the game, of the character, and gave me a lot of ideas to think about, like things I wanted to explore more in the system, more in this particular campaign with my character, etc. So I really had a lot of fun. It was very enjoyable, and it probably gave me more stuff to think about after the session than I thought about during the session. So that's it. I think it's really kind of cool to look back at these things, whether you've run a game or played in a game, and say, well, what's the takeaway from this? What can I use next time to make gaming better and more fun? What do you think?